The sun was barely up when I heard the unmistakable sound of a party blaring from my backyard. At first, I thought maybe I was dreaming. The beat of the music was too loud to ignore, like a DJ horn blaring in the middle of the morning, and I could hear the sound of people laughing, splashing, and then a shout about a beer cooler flipping over. I pulled on my slippers, grabbed a mug of coffee, and dashed outside in my pajamas. But when I reached the back door and looked out, I froze. There, in the middle of my pond, was a neon-lit pontoon boat, bouncing with every wave. Floating nearby was an inflatable swan, half-sunken with a familiar face Karen, the HOA president, clutching onto it like she was the star of a poorly directed pirate movie. And if that wasn't enough, they even had a banner stretched between two stakes, reading, "Welcome to Karen's Lagoon." Now, to be clear, this wasn't some public park. This was my pond. My private pond. Fenced off, clearly marked, and something I had spent years making perfect. I had never invited anyone to use it, let alone for a boat party. But there they were, treating it like their personal water park. I could feel my blood pressure rise. How dare they? How dare Karen, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, decide that she could just take my property for her own party without asking? But as the scene unfolded before me, one thought flashed through my mind. If they wanted a party in my pond, fine. But next time, they'd be swimming with snapping turtles. But let's rewind a bit. It all started 2 weeks before that infamous splash. I'm Ethan, and by day, I'm a software engineer. By night, I'm an amateur wildlife photographer. I've had this house for about 5 years now, and let me tell you, I didn't buy it for the house. I bought it for the pond. It's natural, spring-fed, crystal clear, and surrounded by willow trees and tall reeds. It's my escape, my sanctuary, my retreat from everything until Karen moved in. I didn't have a problem with her at first. She was new to the neighborhood, just trying to settle in, right? But it didn't take long for Karen to make her presence known. In the first week, she fined the Johnsons for HOA-ing unapproved wind chimes. She demanded a neighbor paint his mailbox a specific color to match her palette. And she even told me to move my trash bins 3 inches closer to the curb. Yeah, 3 inches. If it sounds ridiculous, trust me, it was. But here's the thing. I kept my head down. I figured if I stayed out of her way, she'd do the same. Boy, was I wrong. It all started when I noticed strange tire tracks on my side path leading to the pond. It wasn't part of any community walking trail, but there they were, the marks leading right up to the edge of my pond. So, I put up a no trespassing sign. Simple, right? But then, a few days later, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a group of unfamiliar people lounging by my dock, drinking cocktails and snapping selfies. I walked over, trying to stay calm. I waved and asked them what they were doing. One guy in an Hawaiian shirt grinned and said, "Karen and invited us to the pond party." Pond party? I stared at the guy. You've got to be kidding me. I marched straight to Karen's door, knocked so hard I thought I might rattle the frame. She opened the door with this big, fake smile on her face, like she was the mayor of the neighborhood. When I explained that the pond was private property and not for community use, she didn't even flinch. "Oh, Ethan, you really should read your HOA handbook. Clause 14, Section B, communal recreation access during the summer months," she said, while VYing around a binder like she was holding a court sentence. Now, I've read the HOA handbook cover to cover. I knew there was no such clause, but Karen didn't care. She just kept smiling and said, "You're welcome to join us tomorrow," before slamming the door in my face. That night, I went through everything I had: my property deed, land survey, HOA charter, closing papers. And everything pointed to the same thing. The pond was mine, and Karen didn't have a legal leg to stand on. But just showing her a piece of paper wouldn't work. Karen wasn't the type to back down easily. No, I needed witnesses. So, I did what I had to do. I showed up early to the next HOA meeting, armed with maps, documents, and a folder that looked like it could choke a horse. Karen was already there, sipping iced coffee and holding court like she was the CEO of the cul-de-sac. When the topic of community recreation came up, I stood up, calmly laid out my case, and showed everyone that the pond wasn't part of the HOA jurisdiction. Karen didn't even blink. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and said, "Ethan's mistaken. We received a REVY shown in 2019 GIVY ing us summer rights to all natural water features within the neighborhood." I asked for proof. She told me the document was pending digitization. I showed the room proof that no such REVY shown existed. She smiled again, this time with a hint of smugness, and said the city must have misfiled it. The truth didn't matter. What mattered to Karen was power, and she had every neighbor backing her, even if they were wrong. At that moment, I realized this wasn't about property rights anymore. It was about Karen trying to create a kingdom where she was the queen, and she wanted the pond to be part of her royal court. That's when I realized something. If Karen and the HOA wanted to treat my pond like a community water park, I could turn the tables, and I wasn't going to do it with lawyers or shouting matches. No, I was going to fight back with nature itself. I had a plan. I was going to introduce snapping turtles into the pond. The perfect residents for my waterway. Not violent, just territorial. They'd make sure no one would want to stay in the pond too long. The next day, I drove out to a wildlife rehabilitation center and met with Dr. Vicky, a herpetologist who was more than excited to help me with my plan. She showed me a group of snapping turtles, rescue turtles, that had been displaced from drained wetlands. They were legal to relocate and would be perfect for my pond. So I did it. I introduced them gently, made sure they had food, and watched as they settled into their new home. Chompers, Sergeant Snaps, Mudface, and Big Sheila. I even set up cameras to monitor them. They took to the pond like they'd lived there forever. Then, the weekend came. And of course, Karen couldn't stay away. There they were again, the same group, partying like it was a public beach. I watched from my window as the pontoon boat parked right in the middle of the pond. People were floating in tubes, laughing and yelling, and there was Karen in the middle of it all. That's when it happened. Chompers made his move. He drifted towards the boat, slowly, like a sentinel on duty. And when one of the partygoers tried to climb back into the boat, they screamed and scrambled. Something bumped me. Something's in the water. And before long, chaos erupted. The inflatable flamingo got attacked, the speakers went dead, and Karen, in all her glory, fell right off the raft, screaming and thrashing as she went under. I didn't move. I just sipped my coffee, watching the spectacle unfold. Eventually, the pond calmed down, and the partygoers fled, drenched and embarrassed. Karen stomped across my lawn, soaked and furious. "You did this," she screamed. I stepped outside, looking calm as ever. "You mean the native wildlife?" I raised an eyebrow. "I have all the permits." She fumed, red-faced. "This isn't over." But I knew she was beaten. The next day, an official complaint appeared on my door. Karen had filed a grievance with the HOA, accusing me of introducing dangerous wildlife to the neighborhood. But I wasn't worried. I had Dr. Vicky on my side. She sent over the wildlife board's approval, showing that everything I'd done was legal. Still, Karen wasn't done. She tried to rally the HOA, claiming the turtles were a danger. But I wasn't backing down. At the next meeting, I presented all my EVY maps, documents, footage, and even a clip of Karen's party going wrong. That was the moment the tide turned. The board rejected Karen's claims, and she was stripped of her position as HOA president. But that wasn't enough. I'd had enough of her meddling. I filed a report with the IRS, exposing how she had been profiting off the pond by charging for boat parties. The next HOA meeting was a showdown. I played footage from Eventbrite, showing how she had been selling tickets for boat parties at my pond. It didn't take long before the entire room turned on her. Karen was finally out. She lost her position, her business, and her credibility. But the story wasn't over. With Karen gone, I turned my pond into a conservation area, officially protected from any future intruders. The neighborhood began to respect the pond, not as a place to party, but as a wildlife sanctuary. And then Karen, in her ultimate defeat, sold her house without even mentioning the destroyed patio or the legal mess she left behind. She tried to sell the proximity to my pond as some sort of feature, but it was clear she had lost. Now, the pond is safe, the turtles still roam, and the community has learned that sometimes you don't need to fight fire with fire. Sometimes, all you need is patience, a little strategy, and a snapping turtle or two. As for Karen, well, let's just say she learned the hard way that you can't mess with someone's property and expect no consequences. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare like this? Or maybe you've had your own Karen experience. Drop a comment below and share your story. Let's get the conversation going.